Oh, can you hear me now? Did this happen? Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't click the I didn't click the sorry. I didn't click the start button on the microphone. Okay, so I was just saying that Marcella was sharing, and I really appreciate what Marcella was sharing. And I was saying how all of the community members are so amazing because everybody's always like sharing and helping and assisting. So Marcella was saying, hi, Thais, please remind viewers with slow internet connections to hover over the video. That will cause a few buttons to appear, and then in brackets he put overlay. At the bottom of the video, click on the one that looks, and I'm not sure what the rest of it is, but I think that he might still be typing. But I think there's going to be buttons there that you can push, it sounds like, to just work with the internet connection so it's better. And I was just saying how everybody's so supportive. Like, you guys are amazing. In the frigging Facebook group, I'm just blown away all the time when I go in there. Everybody's so supportive, puts video links, puts all kinds of incredible stuff in there to help each other out. And I just want to say thank you to you guys again for doing that and being so supportive. So let me see. So I have some pre-questions. Okay, today's an exciting day because there's so many, you guys have asked so many questions. And I'm going to go through a bunch of different things today. Okay. Daniel Janetto says, hi, Daniel. I am very critical of my partner, and it seems like whatever she does isn't good enough or moving fast enough. The struggle for me is whether to move on or dig into the details and keep working. I'm trying to figure out whether it is the flaw of me always wanting bigger, better, and more, or the empty feeling waking up next to a person I don't feel completely inspired by. I struggle. What work do I need to do to organize my mind, whether it is fear of commitment or feeling joy and embracing the moment, or time to move on and stop suppressing my emotion? Am I bipolar or bipersonality? Okay, so a couple really important things. I know Daniel a little bit, and you're going to be fearful avoidant. So, and I've never really talked to you about attachment styles. So you're going to be fearful avoidant, for sure. Sometimes fearful avoidance go like this. They like always, fearful avoidance like will be on the anxious side, and then their feelings can often flip-flop really quickly. So it'll be like, because what you're actually experiencing isn't necessarily your feelings flip-flopping, it's the two opposing sides of your attachment spectrum being activated. So there's the anxious side of you being like, oh my gosh, I feel connected, I need this person. And then when that shifts and something triggers deactivating strategies, you're going to go into your avoidance side. And that shift from activating to deactivating feels like such a shift in your feelings that it'll feel like your feelings kind of turn off or go away. So that's one thing you just want to put out there, and make sure you take the Fearful Avoidant Attachment Style course, because it'll really clarify a lot of stuff for you. So that's one thing. Thing number 2, never suppress your emotions. Your emotions are feedback mechanisms. You have to feel your emotions. Your emotions are always correct, but you have to identify what you're feeling them about and try to make sure that you're feeling them about the right things. Okay. So for example, I would go like this, and this is for anybody who's experiencing any kind of relationship pain or challenge. I would sit down, I would write out all the things that are bothering you about the relationship or about whatever the problem is, right? Like, let's say it's a work problem or it's a family problem, whatever it is, you write down, you dump all the concerns on paper. I'm going to be doing the next webinar is going to be about this. It's going to be about this specific worksheet that's in the Emotional Mastery and Reprogramming course. This is how you guys want to deal with all of your emotional challenges, all of your pain points. So you sit down, you write every single thing that's bothering you. So let's say the situation is, I'm not sure what to do about my relationship. Okay, underneath, dump all of the concerns. Why? What are the fears? What are the reasons? What are the pain points? What are the challenges? And then you want to work through every part of them. How do you work through every part of them? Number 1, you question the story. So let's say, for example, the relationship is, I'm not sure about my relationship. Okay. What's one of the whys? Maybe one of the whys is, what did you put in here? My partner doesn't inspire me enough. Okay. And let's say, what is another thing in here? One of your concerns is it the flaw of me always wanting bigger and better? Okay, so I'm afraid that I am flawed for wanting more. Okay, so you write all these things down, and then you're going to pull them through. You're going to have lots of them in there. Every single person with a situation like this, because it's very general, you're going to have lots. You're going to be like, I'm afraid of commitment. I'm afraid of being taken advantage of. I'm afraid of, like, write all those things out and then question them. Can you absolutely know that each of these things are true? And look for proof of otherwise. Like, do you know for sure that your partner doesn't inspire you? Is there anything that your partner does that does inspire you? Is there anything that she says or shows, a way she shows up where it is inspiring? So you look for the stories, and you want to be really clear and really tune in, be present with yourself, pause with yourself, sit with yourself, get clear. And once you are clear, then you move into, because if you take enough time to consider, I'm going to go on a tangent here for 1 second, because this is another important thing that I've noticed this week. When we are unclear about something or indecisive, it's because we're not trusting ourselves. And the reason we're not trusting ourselves is because we haven't actually paused to consider. We're just reacting to emotions. We haven't actually paused and been like, hold on, what do I want? And sat with it and maybe meditated on it or journaled about it. And so we're making these like not fully thought through decisions based on not sitting with ourselves for long enough. So super important. So work through your stories, sit with yourself during them. Don't rush into making some kind of assumption. And then ask yourself, and what do I need to feel better right now? Maybe I need to ask my partner to do more inspiring things with me. Maybe I need to leave the relationship. Maybe I need, and it's going to be any one of those things. But write those things all out and get really clear. And that will be extremely helpful. And no, that is not a symptom of being bipolar. Bipolar is very different. And bipersonality, no. This is a symptom of fearful avoidance attachment style at times. So I just want to say that. I hope that's helpful. Nikki, I believe I'm an AA. Should I only try to get into relationships with secure attachment individuals, or until I heal myself will I keep attracting or being attracted to FA and DAs? I don't feel strong feelings for my partner until I feel they are going to leave me. Okay, this is an amazing question too. Okay. Wow, I'm so excited to answer questions today. I was looking at the Facebook group. I had this quick little break before I started working here, and I was going through the questions, and I was like excited to answer everything because they're such good questions. I feel like I learn from just making insights based on the questions that you guys have. I'm like, oh, of course, this is the pattern. So thank you for all the amazing questions. I'm just going to reread this whole thing from Nikki. This is important for all attachment styles, but especially anxious. And I'm going to give you a little bit of context on what's going on. I believe I'm an AA, which is an anxious attachment style, is our short form. Sometimes people say AP, anxious preoccupied, same exact thing. Should I only try to get into relationships with secure attachment individuals, or until I heal myself will I keep attracting or being attracted to fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance? I don't feel strong feelings for my partner until I feel they're going to leave me, or until they do leave. I'm confused. Was I in love and didn't know, or is the rejection what makes me love them? Okay. When we come from unhealthy attachment styles, especially usually anxiously attached individuals, it's very, very common to go like this, to mix up being in love with your attachment style being activated. So sometimes we think in love is the infatuation, and it's that like push pull, and it's that like craziness and that roller coaster and that high of emotions and that intensity. And that's not what love is. Love is feeling secure, feeling like you can trust, feeling like you can be vulnerable, feeling like there's still a romantic component, and that romantic component is a portion of the relationship for sure, but it's actually not supposed to be the foundational part of the relationship. What should be there is all these other foundational things like love, trust, consistency, safety, validation of each other's feelings and needs and emotions, connection, commitment. All these different things are sort of the counterparts. The romance for sure has to be there. Otherwise, it's not a romantic relationship. But that's not supposed to be, you're not supposed to feel how you feel in the honeymoon phase permanently. And just because that fades away, and I don't mean fades away like goes away, I mean like that extreme high that you originally have, your neurochemicals just won't stay like that. It's just not the way that it'll ever go for anybody. But when that high fades away, there should still be that romantic component, but it should be substituted in with like peace and love and gratitude and connection and sharing and continuous learning about one another and openness. And so that love should feel safe. But because a lot of our subconscious comfort zones from childhood say love is trauma, love is scary. And really, when we say love, it's really attachment. Attachment is trauma. Attachment is scary. Attachment is people leaving. Attachment is, then what happens is our subconscious associates that with love. And then we tend to fall in love or feel in love with those types of individuals that are expressing those types of patterns. And that's where we can get into that kind of like slippery slope. And so notice that there's a difference between love and infatuation, and there's a difference between love and your attachment style being activated. And that's a really important thing for everybody to take inventory of, because that's something I see very commonly, and it's a fantastic question. So let's see. Okay, so Marcelo goes on to say, in case you guys are having any slow connections, when you hover over the video and the buttons appear, click on the button that looks like a clog and switch to a lower quality video. The audio quality will be sufficient anyways, and it will keep the video from freezing. Thank you so much, Marcelo, for sharing that. That's so thoughtful of you. There are 2 Facebook groups. So one was, so there's just 2 Facebook groups, kind of. I don't even know if you can consider them groups. I'm not the best with social media, but one is the actual discussion group. Max, I don't know if you're in the discussion group, actually. I don't think I've seen you in there. And that's the personal development school discussion group. That's where like the majority of the discussions are. And the other one is like the personal development school. It's just a page. It's like a business page, and people can like it. And sometimes we post content on there. I have like a team that helps to organize things, put stuff up there. But it's the group for that that you want to join. And that's where I'm really like, I'm pretty active in there. I'm going in there and checking every like 2 to 3 days and answering it. I probably would say I've answered 85% of the questions in there, a little less this week, but I'm going to bump that back up over the next couple of weeks. So generally like 90% of the comments in there will be answered. And I leave the ones if like everybody's given really supportive answers and they're amazing. I'm like, okay, these are good. So good question. Yeah, definitely join in there, Max. Anna says, doing reprogramming those 7 areas of life, I'm having trouble putting anything under spiritual. What can be a part of spiritual life? So spiritual can be like your actual relationship to God, your belief in God, spirituality. I would honestly put the relationship to yourself under spiritual in a way, because I think the more we get in touch with ourselves and we remove painful programming, the more we get in touch with what we truly are. This might sound cheesy to some of you, but I think we're like actually unconditionally loving beings underneath a lot of the layers of programming that we have. And whenever there's a need to judge or push away or do those different things, I think that's usually a symptom of a wound. And anyway, so you could put so many different things, but it can also be, I mean, it could be that you go to church. It could be that you meditate and don't go to church at all. It could be that you spend time out in nature. It could be that you have a spiritual practice where it's like something that you practice gratitude towards, or manifestation or law of attraction, if those are things you believe in. It could be, what else? Prayer. It could be so many different things. So it's really, what does spirituality mean to you? And then coming from there and putting that into the spiritual area of your life. But great job, Anna. Great work. And I'm so glad you're doing reprogramming in that way. Those are some of my favorite exercises, and I'm happy to hear that you're doing them. So Jermaine says, okay, you guys are amazing. So I'm going to talk about a lot of these questions. I'm going to try to go through the questions really quickly today, because I'm going to add a bunch in at the end that I've collected from like the discussion forum and the members lounge. Some really good questions in the school that I wanted to bring out in a little more detail, all related to the topic of anxious attachment today. So I'm going to answer these questions first. Jermaine says, I have a DA question. Is it common for DAs not to apologize? It seems like they're in denial about their mistakes or wrongdoings. Sometimes, yes. I would say it's a pattern that I do see. I wouldn't say it's like really prominent. I would say it's something that I see maybe like 30, 40% of DAs put those sorts of sort of things out there. The reason is that usually nobody apologized to them. They usually have an association that an apology is a weakness. And usually there's this like unwillingness to be vulnerable, and sometimes apologizing can feel like a very vulnerable thing. So it's not something I always see. Often DAs, especially if they're working on themselves a little bit, are really good with apologizing and show up really well in that area. But if it is really strongly like, if there's a lot of lack of vulnerability and a little bit of lack of emotional awareness, then that can definitely be a prevalent pattern. So it's a good question. But I would just, I don't think that's a healthy pattern. So I would be looking at that. Whoever that is in your life, a parent, whoever it is, I would just set some healthy boundaries around that until that changes, or maybe express the importance of apology, because I think that will make a big difference as well. You guys are really sweet to each other. Hi, Shannon. Good to see you. Can you talk about anxiously attached narcissists? So I would say that I won't say the majority. I would say the majority of narcissists, there's a correlation between the attachment type and narcissistic personality disorder, but it is not cause and effect. It's not like all narcissists are this because of this. It's like there tends to be a pattern. The pattern I tend to see is that narcissists tend to be on the fearful avoidance side of anxious attachment. So they're rooted in the anxious attachment, and they have the fearful avoidant trauma patterns. So the reason for this is that if you look, like I think I have the DSM right here. I won't go through all the narcissistic qualities, but like one of the main qualities, this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and I can't diagnose anybody from here with anything, just to be clear, but like I actually won't go through it because it's going to take a long time to read, but of one of the major 9 traits that you need 5 of the 9 to be officially diagnosed as a narcissist. They have to be pervasive, so they have to be consistent all over. One of the main traits for narcissism is that narcissists tend to be like they need so much attention all the time. They tend to be like grandiose, constantly seeking approval, constantly seeking attention, constantly seeking validation, admiration from people outside of themselves. And that constant seeking outside of themselves is very consistent with the anxiously attached individual. And usually there's a lot of like inconsistency in the narcissist's parents, where one parent like makes them feel entitled and really loving and warm, and the other parent tends to be like emotionally withdrawn. And so there tends to be a lot of that going on. But then there's the fearful avoidance side, which is the trauma, right? The pushing away, shutting down, that stuff can happen, but the anxiety tends to be more pervasive than the avoidance side. So the ratio of anxious to avoidant tends to push them more on the anxious side that they become rooted in. So my question for you, Max, is what do you want me to say about them? What are your questions about them? Will you clarify that? Because I could say a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm not sure if it's going to be on point with what you want to hear. I guess what we would say generally about narcissists is that they're just like any other human being. They come from trauma. There is trauma. I think narcissists get a really bad rap, and really they're just wounded people. However, when I say things like this is also not me saying, hey, just don't have boundaries and go be with narcissists. We want to recognize the pain in other people and hold space for that and respect that. And at the same time, we want to be really aware of how other people make us feel in relationships and how other people make us feel in terms of safety, emotionally, all sorts of different things. And it's really, really important. I would say if somebody feels like they're truly with a narcissist, that if that person isn't like doing massive transformation and working on themselves and in that space, then a narcissist is going to be a very, very, very traumatizing relationship. And so you want to be really clear about that. So that's my space there. Max says, I've heard something about that in the webinar. Why do I find it so difficult to question my stories instead of succumbing to my emotions? It takes, hi, Hadil. It takes immense willpower from me, and I feel much more comfort, though simultaneously pain. This is a beautiful written awareness here, but simultaneously pain when feeling hurt, victimized, and when sobbing. What should I do? So number one, be with your emotions. Number one, recognize your emotions to deal. Your emotions are valid. They are true. They are real. They're real neurochemical experiences that are happening. You're not here to invalidate your emotions by questioning them. And from the way you wrote that, I get the sense that you might have jumped to the questioning before just being with them and allowing yourself to feel them and noticing that they're telling you things that are, hey, they're feedback. Like, hey, you're in pain. You're putting yourself through pain on some level, and you want to recognize that. So number one, be with your emotions for a moment, okay? And sit with them for a second and feel them. And then ask yourself, okay, what's the story I'm telling myself? So for example, I just want us to notice. I was speaking to a woman, this is probably years ago now, but she was saying to me, she was devastated. She was getting divorced and she was devastated, like quitting life, like not showing up for anything, devastated, like deep depressive episode. And she was saying, I've seen my friends go through divorce and they're not like me. Like, why am I in so much pain? And I asked her, I'm like, well, what are the stories you're telling yourself about the divorce? And she said, oh, well, I'm not good enough. I was never good enough. My husband never loved me. If he wants to divorce me, none of it was real. I can't trust men at all. I will be alone forever. And so sometimes we take pain and we put a layer of suffering around the pain. And pain is the unmet needs, right? Pain is like, ouch, somebody's hurting me, or ouch, something is taken away from me, or there's some kind of detachment, or there's something. Suffering is what we make that mean. Oh, the pain would be the detachment from the divorce. The suffering would be, and that means I will be alone forever. And so what we really want to recognize is when we get traumatic patterns in childhood, like somebody makes you feel alone and you don't know any better, and our parents pass down their own unconsciousness and their own pain without meaning to, what we really want to recognize is that when this happens, what's really happening is we keep re-traumatizing ourselves by telling ourselves the same stories. It's like mom made you feel alone, and then you're telling yourself the story, oh, your partner doesn't want you, you're going to be alone forever. And we're actually re-traumatizing ourselves by those patterns we absorbed from childhood. And I think one of the helpful things to notice is that often we abuse ourselves with those stories. Often when we get into those stories, we're basically in a space where we are abusing ourselves with the same patterns that got bestowed onto us. And we really want to recognize, like, hey, I can stop that. I can change that. So be with your emotions, then go into questioning the stories. And then once that's over, then you ask yourself what the need is. And you are still always entitled to the need underneath. So the need might be, your partner pulls away, and your need might be for closeness. And you might need to say, hey, I really want to have some presence in the relationship again, or I really want you to be closer and to come back, or, when can we make more time to be together? And if you don't see movement around the needs and you're questioning your stories and you're expressing your needs and nothing's changing, that might be when it's time to leave the relationship. But you have to work it through those steps to truly know. So I hope that helps. And remember, you can do the work after. If it's really painful in the moment, you can always just sit with your emotions first and just process them and be with them, and then move on to the questioning of your stories. Okay. So be patient with yourself. This whole process is about gentleness, like basically a form of reparenting, like connecting to yourself, being close to yourself, showing up for yourself in that kind way. Great question. Okay, so let's see what else. Okay. Is it possible that you were very anxiously learning and through work brought more of the dismissive bits to the surface? I'm trying to see. I think you guys might be chatting between you guys, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I understand the full question. Oh, you guys are talking about Jermaine's attachment style. Okay. Honestly, sometimes it's just sometimes when you go from anxious to sometimes expressing the avoidance side, and you're more you think it's the avoidance side, but it's actually just a shift from anxious to secure, more in the middle. So just be aware, check in with yourselves about that. Because sometimes especially anxiously attached individuals will be like, oh my goodness, I'm becoming avoidant, but really it's that you're losing that intense anxiety. And it feels like avoidance, and you just have to sort of adjust through that. And you're actually sometimes learning about what healthy and rooted and stable and safe love is. So just check in with yourselves, because I can't give you guys that answer without asking you a million questions. So just check in and ask yourself those questions. Hi, Christy. Christy says, I'm doing the FA course, but feeling overwhelmed. I feel anxiety with reading the workbook and feel like I don't know my answer to most things. I assume that means I'm super disconnected from myself. Are there any steps I should take to know what I think and feel before starting the workbook? Great question. So number one, good for you for having the courage to show up and to do that and to ask this question and to come here and still better yourself. And I think that's an amazing sign that you're not just letting the overwhelm eat you, you're taking active action. The first thing is I would do is wherever you feel like you don't have an answer, leave it and come back to it. And just these courses, even though they're not like 50 hours long, these courses have a lot of material. And the material is really high level. Like it's really intense, really in depth, forces you to dig deep into yourselves. I've noticed a lot of the comments in the Facebook group, like, whoa, this is intense work, like a deep dive. And it is. And so be gentle, that you do not have to be perfect at this. You don't have to succeed at this. You can do this course and you can retake this course and you're going to learn new things the second time, the third time. You can do this course in modules. You can sit with things, reflect on them for a long time, and then get into it. But the first thing I would do, Christy, that's going to help you the most, and this is a great question, this is a great thing for anybody, is if you find yourself in that space, just start, Christy, with the feelings and needs journaling. So just sit in the evening if you can, or I would recommend doing this every day, but if you can't do it every day and you want to do it every few days, that's wonderful too. But just sit and go through and ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling? What was I feeling throughout the course of the day today? And you'll see in the Fearful Avoidant workbook, it's broken into like time sections. And just ask yourself, okay, from 8 until 12, what was I feeling? And just try to tune in and look at the emotions worksheet and circle the emotions you remember feeling. And then ask yourself, and what did I need in those situations? And getting in touch with your feelings and needs gets you back into your body. So a lot of fearful avoidance, a lot of dismissive avoidance, even anxiously attached individuals, honestly, are a little bit dissociated, like out of your body. And when we're not in our bodies a lot of the time, when we're not feeling our feelings in real time, we kind of go through life like abandoning ourselves a little bit because we don't know what we're feeling, what we need. So we start falling into the trap of pleasing everybody around us instead of being able to go, ooh, that doesn't feel good. I think I need to take space there. Or, ooh, what that person said hurt me. I need to express a boundary. And so getting back in your body will get you to start feeling your feelings in real time. And your feelings are your guides to start recognizing the stories you're telling yourself, the needs that you have, the underlying core wounds that exist. So that's your entry point. So if any of you are struggling with feeling like you don't know yourselves, just start with that. And I would just take your time with that. Practice that for a week, 2 weeks. And what you'll see is the first 3-4 days, you'll be like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And then you'll start to click and notice little things. And the moment you start having like 2 or 3 things that you notice click, your brain's got it. Your subconscious is latched on and you'll start seeing the process unfold a lot more quickly. So that's amazing. And Jermaine, that makes perfect sense. You can be right in there in the middle. And as long as you're recognizing the tendencies, the traits, and the wounds and the needs of both sides, you're fully equipped to do all the work that you need to do. Sometimes I go to scroll down and it goes way down all of a sudden, and then I lose the track of everything. So, Christy, just go slow, take whatever yeah, that's really sweet. Max, you're so supportive. Hi, Shayna. Good to see you in here. You're not in the discussion group, Max. Okay. Yeah, that's so funny. Max, we need you in there. Max is one of the what would we say? One of the like key people in the discussion group. And there's all wonderful people in there, Max. I will send you a link. I'm not sure. Actually, you know what? I can send you a link right now. If you guys are not in this discussion group already, I have it open here. I forgot. Okay. So I'm putting a link in the chat for anybody who wants to join. I hope this is correct. This is in the comments. It sounds like it shows up as a really big link. I hope you can see it. Join there. And everybody's like asking amazing questions. I pull questions. Like so many people asked about dismissive avoidance and sex. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make a whole bunch of videos about sex for all the different attachment styles. So I learned, like I listen to what you guys are asking and I like make videos out of them, bring in questions into here. Like I'll talk about some of them today in here and we'll go through a bunch of different questions in here as we go. So Jenny Phillips says, hi, Jenny. How does one get in the discussion group? Okay, good. I think I'm just in the Facebook group. There's also a discussion in the members lounge. So when you click on the members lounge and you go to the members lounge looks like a course. So it has a man, it's like one of the course blocks. Sometimes you have to click on the second page. I know it sort of rotates them. So click on the members lounge. It has a guy sitting there in a suit, in like a stool, kind of like kicked back, relaxing. And I think he looks like he's relaxing. That's the impression in my mind. And you can click on that. And then when you go to, you'll see it says like webinars. You can click on webinars. Webinar library has all of the past webinars. So all of these ones are recorded. They're put in there. So you can check, like we title them. Let's say you want more Q&A about dismissive avoidance. You can go in and you can check through there and see what Q&As come up and what the topics are specifically. So there's that. And then when it says forum, it'll say discuss, DISQUS. And that's a place where people can post their questions in there as well. And I see those and go through them in there. So that's awesome. Yeah, so we need you to be in there, Max. Jermaine, I don't like exposing my birthday because I don't like the center of attention. I like it when it's about information or sharing or serving, but if it's like me, I get awkward. But yes, it was my birthday on Halloween. I don't know how you knew, but thank you for noticing and remembering that. Thank you, Max. I appreciate it. Hi, AJ, or sorry, Natalie. Is it Natalie? AJ, I always think of you as AJ. Like in my head, I can't break that association for some reason. I think it's because the first day. But that's okay that you're late. Don't worry. Okay, so Hadil says, I'm AA. My partner seems to be secure. We're in a long distance relationship. Some days I control my emotions. Is it Natalie or Natasha? I'm so sorry. I'm like amazing names for some reason. I think because I'm so interested in people, I really struggle and I am so sorry. Because I read your questions and you have amazing questions and amazing answers in all of these different spaces. So thank you for that. And sorry that I keep confusing you with AJ. So I'm AA. My partner seems to be secure. We're in a long distance relationship. Some days I control my emotions. Other days they control me. Being in this long distance is consuming my thoughts and emotions. I can't focus and follow through. Okay. So number one, you want to start creating habits that make that relationship in buckets. So you want to be like, these are the times that we're going to talk, or you want to do something that systemizes the relationship so you're not constantly thinking about it. Think of it a little bit as like an addiction, right? You're like, your thoughts keep going there even when you don't want them to. They keep reverting back, keep going back. And you want to make sure that you are setting the boundaries for yourself and your thinking. And you can do this by just saying something like, my time when I get home from work or my time when I'm doing something around the house, whatever it might be, that time is mine and it's fully mine. And I'm going to start practicing being present and mindful for my own time when I'm not with the person or talking to the person, and start noticing your thoughts and when they try to bring you back to the other person. The less you're present with yourself, the more you're going to hunger for that person. It's going to go into a vicious cycle because you're not going to be giving yourself that love and presence, and you're going to crave it outside of you, and it's going to make you feel like you're paralyzed. So this is so important for anxiously attached individuals to sort of break that addiction in your thinking. Set conscious boundaries for yourself. So it's like, maybe you meditate or have an evening routine for yourself for 2 hours in the evening or an hour in the evening, whatever it might be. It can just be when I get home from work, I speak to my partner in the long distance relationship for a period of time. And then after a certain time, I just focus on myself. You want to make sure that you set the boundary there so that your thoughts, your behaviors, your feelings are all focused on you at that time. Very, very, very important. And I would follow that up by like, what is keeping you ruminating? Are they fears? And if they're fears, write them all on paper. Is it like, oh, what if we grow apart? What if we disconnect? Write out all those fears and question them. Pull them through the emotional processing worksheet that's both in the go to the emotional mastery course. That's the best place to find it. Okay. Okay, so Max says, I guess I'm mostly interested in the effective boundary setting part with narcissists, specifically considering the anxious way they attach. Considering I have to live with them. Okay, so it's so interesting. There's this big theme. I tend to find that the things that I'm working with people on, like friendships, family members, just everybody, I get these like themes that are so strong where suddenly it's like everybody wants to talk about the narcissism. And right now it's a huge thing with narcissism and family members. And I've decided literally as of this morning, so it's kind of synchronistic, Max, that I'm going to put how to deal with narcissistic family members or narcissistic individuals. But I'm going to focus on family because that's a big thing for a lot of individuals. And there's a lot of like healing that needs to take place as a child of a narcissist. And that's really where I wanted to put the focus on. Because there's a lot of similar patterns across the board. It's putting so much pressure on yourself, always feeling like love has to be earned. You have to earn your worth, earn love. There's so many components here. So I'm going to put a whole course out about this. We have our November courses coming out this week, but like Monday. But I'm going to put the next course is in December about this because there's a ton in here. There's a gold mine of information, not just about how to deal with a narcissist, but how to heal your own patterns that come out of having a narcissistic parent. I'm assuming that it's a parent in your case, Max. And here's one of the first things I would say. Number one, give yourself the opportunity to set boundaries all the time. And if they keep invading your boundaries, keep pushing the boundaries, keep like coming inwards, anything like that, you have to make sure that you keep just telling the person, look, I don't have to explain myself to you. This is the way that I feel, because there's not really an argument for that. It depends also on like the intensity of the narcissist. If they become angry or violent or something like that, because of you setting boundaries, then it's good to like leave the premises if you can, take space, spend some time outside of the house. The more you have space, the better. But the most important boundary to set while you're there is the emotional boundary, the stop taking on their feelings. Do it consciously. If somebody comes in and says, hey, like this, you should be doing this, or dumps on you and says, this is how I'm feeling and blah, 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 and just gives it all over to you, you have to be able to set a boundary there and go, hey, maybe you say in your mind, okay, I'm going to speak to this person for 3 minutes about this and then I'm going to leave. And then maybe you say something like, hey, you know what? I can't really talk about this right now. It's not a very good time. I'm sorry. And in your mind, you have to leave and go say to yourself, reprogram your associations. That is theirs to deal with, not mine. By trying to take it on and heal it for them, I'm probably just enabling them to not take action or work on healing themselves. The emotional boundaries are the biggest parts, and the boundaries and how you feel the need to please the narcissist, to take on their feelings, to earn your worth from other people because of the training you got from them that showed you that. All of those things are really, really important. And then lastly, the only other thing I would say is the gray rock method. If you haven't heard of it, maybe I'll make a video about this too. But the idea is that if somebody's really in your space, really invasive, one of the best things you can do with a narcissistic individual is do the gray rocking, which is basically the just be as subdued as possible. Any ammunition you give them that's too positive, they're going to try to latch. Too negative, they're going to try to use that to latch in a negative way. Like, oh, I can't believe you did this to me. You owe me, or like something can come up, right? So you just want to be super aware of some of that stuff. So any tips for AAs when FA and DAs put up walls and you have to give emotional space? I find this space difficult because not knowing how they feel is frustrating, especially as A's are good at expressing. Also, if anyone feels this, also not sure if anyone else feels this, but the more I learn about FAs and HSPs, the more I feel terrible/guilty for anything I said or did. And now knowing how much they would have felt as a result. Okay, so my dear, a few really, really powerful things in here that are really important shifts to make. Okay, so anxiously attached individuals, when the walls go up, they feel like there's this, it's re-traumatizing essentially, right? It's re-triggering because it's the exact fear that you felt in childhood that said, you're loved, you get all this love, and then suddenly somebody goes missing, and it's like, when is it coming back? What's happening? And you haven't. One of the most important shifts here is to practice self-soothing. And it's going to feel not nice at the beginning. It's going to feel friggin' painful and uncomfortable and not good because you're going to be like, I don't know how to self-soothe. And it's almost like, you can think of it as like riding a bike. Like if somebody sits you on a bike and forces you to ride a bike for the first time and you've never ridden a bike, you're probably going to fall off and it's probably going to hurt. And I would like to think of that as self-soothing in a way, because you didn't get the opportunity to practice learning how to self-soothe, to understand what that meant. So number one thing I would do is remember that self-soothing gets easier. The more habituated it becomes, the more you'll start to actually rely on yourself for your needs. And this is how you're becoming more secure over time. So when you need to give space, I would ask yourself a few questions. Number one, I would ask myself, is it absolutely true that I need this person to not give me space? Is it absolutely true that I need this person to show up, to be there for me, to be available to me right now? Or will I be okay without them if I have to be? Okay, and that's a really important first piece. The second piece I would go with is you say, I find it difficult because not knowing how they feel. So the second piece I would go with is, why are you needing to know how they feel? You're needing to know how they feel because you are literally in a space where you're trying to understand how they feel so you can predict their patterns so that hopefully they won't leave you. And that's a scary place to be also, right? It doesn't feel good. So ask yourself the question, okay, do I 100% need to know how they feel? And will I be okay, if they are doing something separately from me, if they need space because maybe they feel frustrated, maybe they feel bored, maybe they feel like they're questioning the relationship. Human beings go through this. And when we try to take this and make this ours and not let it happen and control it, it just sets us up for disaster. And people are going to go through little changes, challenges, different things in a relationship. And by always needing to know how somebody feels, you put yourself at risk for being in a really, really challenging component of the relationship all the time, right? Where you're always going to feel like I have to chase, I have to figure it out. And this will take time away from you, from your life, from the things you want to be here and do and create. And so try to practice through exposure response. It's not going to feel nice. Try to practice through exposure response, not needing to know how somebody feels. Just go, those are their feelings. I'm going to worry about my feelings. And every time you catch yourself going back to the other person's feelings, just take a moment and go, hold on, I'm over there in their business, doing their life. Nobody's here doing mine. Let me come back to myself and let me be patient and allow them to come back when needed. Okay. So this is a really important practice because it's going to, through exposure response, because the subconscious, as we know, is programmed through repetition, it's going to break that pattern and that program a little bit. And then the last thing here that's really important is the guilt that you feel. There's a phrase, and I said this last week, and I think Max was talking about this too. It's I am responsible for I'm responsible for what I say, and you're responsible for how you take it. Other people are responsible for what they hear, essentially. And so when you catch yourself being in this space of going, oh my goodness, I need to know everything that they're feeling. And then, oh my goodness, what if I hurt them? What if I did something wrong? I really, wounded them. All that's happening is that this person is getting an opportunity to see what wounds exist inside of them, because you can't really reject somebody. It's like if I say to you, you're a purple monster, it's not going to hurt you if none of you believe it. No part of you believes that. But if I say to you, oh, you're not good enough, and you're feeling like that, oh my gosh, it's going to hurt so much. So people don't make you feel anything. They help you feel the things that already exist inside of you. People don't necessarily reject you. They say things to you and they touch on wounds that are already pre-existing, and that brings them to the surface. And every single time that happens, it's an opportunity for healing and for growth. So notice, the more you guilt yourself, the more you're hurting yourself in the process, right? You're hurting yourself for maybe things you said or did that might have been your own programs that got passed down to you that weren't your fault. So all we can do, and this is a lot in the guilt and shame course, is recognize those things, treat ourselves with kindness, question the beliefs we give to ourselves when we feel guilty. Oh, I'm such a bad person. Is it really true? Or Did you make a mistake because you were in pain? And because that person's hurting you too. And you didn't, have better tools at the time. So look for the innocence in the situation, and then ask yourself, what do I need to do to make amends in this situation? And do that, okay? In whatever way possible. And if you're not getting the feedback that you need or want or hope for, then, it's okay to take space and sort of take a break from that at the same time. I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any more questions about that, okay? Anna says, 5 years ago, I dated someone who just told me one day that he was moving to Spain in 7 days. I had my first panic attack. I've had anxiety before, but ever since then, when I masturbate, I cry after a climax. I'm an FA. Could that be related somehow? If it was ever since then, chances are that it is related somehow. Usually when there's something that shifts in our behavior, if it shifts after like a sudden pain point in our lives, like one of the interesting things that I've seen over the years, and again, these are patterns, these are not like be all end all scientific facts that, fit 100% of the time. These are patterns that I recognize that I would say are like fairly prevalent. Usually when somebody has like an illness, or like gets sick with something that's like chronic or strong, or something pops up, usually something was happening at a subconscious level for a little while prior. So usually there was like a lot of stress in the home, or somebody died, or there was a career change that really triggered all these, like usually there's some kind of thing. So whenever there's a shift in something that happens, and there's a really strong pain point that happened right before, usually there's some kind of connection. So the way I would find out about this is I would ask myself when I'm crying, okay, so if this happens and you cry, I would ask yourself, what in me needs to cry right now? What are my emotions telling me about myself or trying to communicate to me? Is it something fear related? Is it something longing related? Is there something I'm missing? Look for the patterns in that situation, and then ask yourself, once you've like worked through those patterns and notice what shows up for you, then bring them through the emotional processing sheet. That's always the way to go. That emotional processing sheet that's about the stories you're telling yourself and your needs, that's always the answer for any painful set of emotions. Why? Because the only reason we emotionally suffer is because we're telling ourselves painful stories or we have unmet needs. So anywhere you are, that's always your go-to. You want to get really good at that sheet. And so the piece here is identifying that link. So you cry, you're in that space, and notice, okay, what am I feeling right now? Okay, was I telling myself stories? Is there something that I'm missing? What was happening right prior to me crying? And just like pull as much information out of there as you can, and then bring it through that worksheet. Thank you for sharing that so vulnerably with all of us. So rephrasing the question, which course can teach me an aid with high attunement to people, more so in romantic relationships? I'm not sure it's a bad thing. So do you feel like you're out of attunement to others? One of the best ways of doing this, believe it or not, is to be in deep attunement with yourself. The more aware you are of what's going on inside of you, the more you'll have understanding with others. And then one other thing that I would say that is important is active listening. So just practice being present. Some of this is in the conflict resolution course. It's coming out in like a couple days. But I would sit with myself and I would practice active listening. I would practice asking myself about my own feelings and needs. And then when I'm with others, practice active listening and practice inquiring, asking people more questions. So when they're explaining, just ask, okay, well, where does that come from? Or what is that all about? And the more you can do that, the more you'll sort of open some of that, like that attunement, that ability to attune. And then try to ask people and do a little bit of research. Notice what they're feeling, ask them what they're feeling, bring up those conversations, and your mind will start making connections between the patterns. Like, oh, I noticed that when my partner is withdrawn and their body language is like this, that they are feeling cold or they're feeling hurt. Or I notice when somebody stops looking me in the eyes that they're feeling insecure. Or you'll start to notice these different patterns. But some of this is in the conflict resolution course. Some of this as well as in the fearful avoidant course, about getting in touch with your own attunement. And in the emotional mastery and belief reprogramming course, there's not so much. I would say conflict resolution course will have the most information about this, but really you can just practice with active listening, with attunement to self, and through asking detailed questions with others. It's a great question, though. Marcelo, could you please create a course on reparenting? Yes, it's so funny. I don't know if you typed this when I was up further in the comments, but there's going to be a lot of this. This is probably one of the most important topics. I wish I created this sooner. But there's me arguing with the past. But I will put this out in December 100%. This will be part of the narcissistic parents and healing core wounds from parents. I'm going to put like a conglomeration of this, and that'll be a huge prevalent part of the modules. And one point of gratitude I want to express to you today, Thais, is I learned about my internal drivers not being wealth building financial success at the moment. So I need to link those. Amazing. Great work, Max. I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about the needs course, and that is a game changer in life. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that you recognize that, because it's so imprisoning to compare ourselves to individuals with different personality needs and then be like, why am I not as ahead in this area? Or why am I not where I should be here? And that's an amazing awareness. So thank you for sharing that. Hi, WL Hong. Thais, it's been about 2 months since I came away from an anxious avoidant trap. I feel these pangs of sadness and hurt that rise up in my chest when I'm doing other things, for example, work. Why do these happen? Yes, this is going to be exactly my answer to you. Amazing insight. Are they a subconscious call to look at these hurt feelings? Yes. Whenever you have emotions are there. Think of the primary function of your emotions as being your guides to help you make subconscious, unhealed aspects of yourself conscious. It's your emotions bring these things into your awareness. So this is really important. When you feel these pangs and they come up, you want to ask yourself, what was I just thinking or believing that caused this pain? Or is this a symptom of some kind of unmet need? Because those are the only two reasons we are in emotional pain. And then ask yourself, okay, what was I thinking and believing? And can I question that story? Because sometimes it's, I will never be loved again. And it's a passing thought that happened on autopilot and your emotions went, ouch, you just hurt yourself with that thought. Or it can be an unmet need. And then you ask yourself, what is that need? And what is the best strategy to get that need met? Do I do it through myself? Or do I do it through other people? Do I ask vulnerably for help from somebody else? And the more you're doing this, the more you'll be processing out that emotion. So amazing. And you can just ask a general question too, if that's too complex, because you're like in the middle of working and you can't like stop and pause and think about it. Although if you practice that worksheet, you'll get good at it. And then it'll become second nature. But you can also just literally ask yourself, what are my emotions telling me right now? And just check in with your thoughts and your needs. Those are always the two things. Okay, great question. Adil, what I meant by the presence and absence of my partner is especially through our text conversations, because sometimes he'll text me something at work and then get busy and leave the topic hanging. Okay, so you want to practice being okay with that. Think of that as like an addiction. And I know that's like a strong term, but truly, there's like a dopamine response elicited when you get the text message. There's this high and a little bit of oxytocin. And then you're waiting to keep getting it and keep getting fed. And then there's this low when it stops. So when that's happening through exposure response, just practice making it okay. I know that sounds so funny, but it's like you want to elicit a changed behavioral response to that. So practice, for example, going, okay, why is it okay that he's not able to respond at this moment? And maybe it's because you get to focus on yourself or your day, or, you get to sort of tune back into yourself and your feelings, whatever it might be. Look for that. Look for the reasons it's okay and why you're okay and why you're safe, even if he doesn't respond or even if he does get busy. And then also ask yourself what you're believing that causes it to hurt so much. Are you believing that he is losing interest in you, that he doesn't care, that he thank you so much for the birthday wishes. Is it that you are making it mean, okay, he doesn't care about me, he's not as interested in me, he's talking to some other woman? Like, it can be so many different things, some other person, whatever it might be. Question those stories. That's going to be the most important part first, and then look for why it's okay and try to elicit. So much of it, addictive patterns are because our subconscious mind was associated so many positive things with something outside of ourselves. So we feel like we keep needing to go there to get those positive things again. And in order to equilibrate that, we have to intentionally lace new emotional associations. So if my original association was like, I need connection, I need closeness, you want to be able to come back and go, hold on, like, why am I okay without it in this moment where the text message topic got hanging? Okay, I'm safe right now. I'm not going to be abandoned. He's not going anywhere. I can focus on myself, my own journey, my healing, my feelings, and get in touch with yourself in those moments. And over time, through making it okay, we don't have to make it a great thing because it's not. That's a lie to yourself when that's something that you do desire is that closeness. But just to make it okay, that you're safe. Everything's going to be okay. The relationship's not going to end. The person's not going to go anywhere. And that's a really, really important thing to do. And honestly, this is such a great topic because so many anxiously attached individuals really, really struggle with this one. It's really tough. So thank you for sharing that. And just remember, when that happens, why does this happen to anxiously attached individuals more than other attachment styles, all 3 other attachment styles? Because that's a symptom of you being the most out of relationship to yourself when you get into a romantic relationship with somebody else. So when it hurts and it causes duress, think of that as a feedback mechanism to let you know that you're not giving yourself enough of your needs. You're not connecting to your own feelings and needs enough. You're not in relationship to yourself enough. And just make sure that you keep practicing that. The more in relationship you get to yourself, the less that will feel like it's really painful. I hope that makes sense. Okay, amazing, Max. Marty Crow. Hi, Marty. Says, Thais, I seem to have binged on self-analysis and relationship analysis and stuff. I then got triggered and shut down for 2 days or so. My pull is just too busy with work. This is tangible and structured. But okay, so hold on. My pull is just too busy with work. Do you mean, Marty, that that work is too busy and it's not allowing you? Hi, Brian. That it's not allowing you to focus on the self-analysis? Or when you say my pull is too busy with work, do you mean that, I'm not sure exactly what you meant there. This is tangible and structured, but I recognize this is displacement, but it's a default. How can I get back on track? Okay, I think I understand your question. So you're saying I shut down for 2 days and now I'm trying to get back on track, but there's a lot of work stuff happening. So I would go like this. One of the most important things to do is when you notice yourself shutting down, it's because there's something going on. There's some kind of safety and protective mechanism. And usually in the case of self-analysis, and this was one of the questions in the Facebook group I wanted to go over, usually in the case of self-analysis and self-awareness or self-realization, relationship analysis, usually it's because your subconscious mind is overloaded. And your subconscious mind, remember, one of its primary functions is to keep you safe and alive. And one of the fastest ways it does this is through maintaining familiarity. So whenever there's this space where you're going, you're pushing on all of your buttons, you're noticing all these things, there's all these tremendous changes happening at a subconscious level, usually your subconscious will fight it back. And that's really, really normal. That means your subconscious is working the way that it's supposed to. I haven't seen a single person yet who hasn't had this experience. I would say this is status quo, all the time. So what you want to do is just recognize this is my ego mind or my subconscious mind trying to maintain these old patterns and not change too quickly. And I would just warm back up to it. So whenever we're working on something new, whenever we're trying to dive into things, we always want to start warming up incrementally to it. Why? Because our brain is wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. And so what we want to do is always intentionally have positive associations and positive emotions built in, right? So if I start, let's say I have a huge work project and I look at the whole project, I'm sure everybody can relate to this, whether it's a work project or a house project, whatever it might be. And human beings tend to go like this. Oh my gosh, I have to build, let's say you're going to build something in your home, a whole shed. You can look at the whole shed and be like, I have to build a whole shed. And it's I have to build a whole thing with my hands and it's overwhelming. And then your brain goes, oh my gosh, overwhelmed feels like pain, and it shuts down to avoid the pain. And so sometimes when we learn so much, we're like, I have so much to learn. There's so much here. And then your brain gets overwhelmed, and overwhelm is a reason that your brain will shut down. And you can go into learned helplessness, right? Which is sort of like a freeze mode when we're not sure where to start or what to do. Best thing to do whenever we're taking on a new task is to chunk it down into little things. So it can be little tiny priorities. So Marty, what was the first and most important part of what you learned? What do you want to focus on first? And write that down. Maybe pick your top 2 or 3 things, and then create a couple strategies to achieve those things really well. This is actually in the procrastination and self-sabotage course. This is my favorite process in this area. It's a 5-step process. It's in the very last module of that course. And it's basically a way of breaking things down. So everything's into little tiny chunks. And so you don't have to go through this. I'm not trying to put more on your plate, Marty, like, oh, and do this too. But what you can do is just put down, okay, I want to work on this, and this. And then once it's chunked down, just put 30 minutes a day, and don't put pressure. Like, I have to do 30 minutes a day now. Make it like really simple for yourself. Like, I'm going to try to do 30 minutes a day. If I end up doing it 3 days a week, amazing. If I end up doing 1 day a week, that's great. And 1 day a week over the course of weeks is still so much more over the course of a year. That will change your relationships. That will create tremendous change. And then what happens is, because your brain feels really easy about 30 minutes a day, or if it's building the shed, it's okay, I'm just going to start with building the door, or just getting all the wood and putting it outside. Like, when it's that easy, your brain feels empowered to do it, and then it feels accomplished after doing it. And then your brain has just associated the task with a positive emotional response. And because your brain is like an intense association making machine, now your brain associates positive things with this stuff, and it doesn't feel need to shut down and protect because there's nothing that's overwhelming it. So now it associates the task with more pleasure than pain. And now you build positive momentum over time, and it gets easier and easier as you go. So it's an amazing question. And I hope that all makes sense. And that's your way of warming back up. Just simplify it for yourself. Pick 1 or 2 things to focus on at a time and simplify. And you know what? I should put a video like that inside the course for you guys, because a lot of people are like, I want to do all these things at once. And I'm putting out a lot of content, and I'm honestly going to keep putting out a lot of content. Like, we have 4 courses out this month that are super in depth, 3 out the next month. So there's going to be a lot to come. And it's just so you have, the reason I'm putting out so much content is so that you have, let's say you're going through a problem in your life, and the problem is anxiety, or, oh my goodness, there's a feeling of depression, or there's, this specific conflict in my life, or this core wound with my parent. Like, I want to have tools so that whatever you guys are facing, you can just go there and just work through it. So that's the goal for me. The goal for me, for you guys, is not to work through everything and keep up with all the courses. The goal is to pick the courses that are most resonating with you, feel the best for you, providing the most value at this specific time in your life, have the resources there for you to support you in your journey, have sheets to work through all of it, have a really supportive process, and then move on to the next thing when the next life challenge pops up, or whatever, next topic you feel inspired to learn about, or you want to achieve more in that area. So don't stress or pressure yourselves in any of this process. Okay, guys? Thank you for that question, Marty. Hi, John. John, I see you giving so much good advice. I hope this is dismissive, John. But I think you took dismissive out of your name, which means maybe you feel like you're healing your attachment style. I know, I just noticed, John, that you're putting a lot of really helpful feedback to other individuals who ask about questions for the dismissive avoidant. I just wanted to thank you for doing that. I think it benefits a lot of people. So how should I be with my mother who is enmeshed and try to get my validation for her experience? I want to set boundaries, but don't want to make her sad. Okay, this is a tough one, eh? And I bet a lot of you guys have faced this before. So number 1, when you set a boundary with somebody who's enmeshed, this is the way I go about it. I just go out of my way to express like kindness, love, like, hey, and vulnerability. So let's say your mother comes to you. I'm going to pretend I'm you. So I'm John. Mother comes to me and says, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what happened to me today at work. I need this and da-da-da. And all of a sudden I'm feeling overwhelmed and like, oh my gosh, I'm taking all this on. I might say something like, hey mom, I really appreciate that you had a tough day at work. And I know that you're capable of moving through this on your own. And, I notice that I take on a lot of your emotions. This is the vulnerability piece. It's just like honest self-expression. I notice that I take on a lot of your emotions and I don't want to do that. And right now I'm trying to work through some of my own stuff. And so I kind of need you to work through that. And I'm going to work through mine. And maybe we can talk about it at another time when I'm feeling that I have more room emotionally. But right now I'm sort of focused on my own journey. And, there's some really good resources online. You can go on YouTube. There's some good books. Like, do some research for how you want to move through these problems. And I'd love to hear about how you move through it on the other side, or come out of it on the other side, right? So you're being kind, you're being honest, you're being vulnerable. And it's not like, hey, get away from me and don't talk to me. It's, hey, I see that you're in pain. I appreciate that. However, I can't be responsible for that right now. And I want you to be responsible for yourself there. And I'd love to hear about how it goes. And so it's just a kind way of setting a boundary. Oh my gosh, Nikki, yes, I'm not taking any down. I'm leaving all the courses up all the time. The course inventory will just get bigger over time. So don't worry. Thanks for answering that, Daniel. Just say that I love you. Oh, thank you so much, Adil. I really, really appreciate that so much. Thank you. So FAs need to learn about it being inappropriate to react with anger and rage because of expressing their boundaries. Oh, Max, are you reposting this question? Because this is a great question. Okay, so FAs need to learn about it being inappropriate to react with anger and rage because of not expressing their boundaries as well. We have unrealistic expectations. When I learned this as a prior fearful avoidant, this was the way I learned this, and I passed this on to fearful avoidance. And if you're the anxious partner of a fearful avoidant, tell your fearful avoidant partner this, because fearful avoidants generally have really big hearts and like love and want to be loved and like are big hearted people. But because there's a lot of trauma or pain, and because they don't, exactly like Max said, express their feelings and needs, there's a buildup of emotion that takes place. And I remember reading, this is years ago, but I remember reading that one of the biggest relationship killers is volatility in a relationship and like angry outbursts. And I remember it was number 3 in whatever study it was that I was reading at the time. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, because you think at the time, right, that like going like, what the hell? Like, you never do this and I'm doing all of this. You think those things are justified when you're in that headspace. And really, it's yours to be accountable for, because you're not expressing your feelings and needs. And then you resent, and then you take it out on somebody else, and then you feel guilty, and then you go back to overcompensating by not expressing your feelings and needs and over taking care of others. And there's this like cyclical thing that happens. Anxiously attached individuals do this too. But usually it's like they'll deactivate for very short periods of time instead of lengthy periods of time, and usually not so strongly, and sometimes through more manipulative sort of strategies. So when this happens, right, one of the most important things you can do is recognize, like, that's a great way to end a relationship, is to constantly like be in that space. And that if you feel the need to do that, it's a symptom of not expressing your feelings and needs a lot of the time, and that's yours to heal and resolve. So it's really important. Thanks for sharing that. Marty says, narcissists considering the anxious way they attach. Yeah, narcissists are not always one attachment style though. Yeah, they attach way more anxiously, but they can have a very dismissive side, but that dismissive side comes out much less. Sometimes narcissists can be dismissive avoidance though. It's not, that's not like this isn't like a rule. This is just a pattern. Like, I see more narcissists who are anxious with that fearful avoidance side, but spending most of their time in the anxious. Think about when a narcissist goes to like a function, right? An event. They need that attention from everybody. They need that connection. They're in that very anxious, approval-seeking side. And then the avoidance side can come out quite harshly. So they have that fearful avoidance side that can come. Ellie says, so the FA guy that I'm interested in was flaky again, and I was disappointed, but nowhere near as triggered a year and a half ago when that happened. I sent him this text, and I felt really good about it. I don't want you to feel pressured. I guess I just got excited about the idea of seeing you this weekend. I want to see you come through more often if that's something you really want, and if not, I'm probably going to need you to fall back just because I need to show up for what I really want. That's amazing. That was beautiful. That was so well said, so well put, and such a perfect balance of you not telling a story to yourself that's causing suffering, but identifying the underlying need and showing up for it. That was like perfect. 10 out of 10. Excellent job. Well done to yourself. Congratulations. Like, for you in relationship to yourself. That's so beautiful. Yeah, great job. yes, narcissism operates on that spectrum big time. Sometimes I joke around and say there's narcissist with a capital N and with a lowercase n, but narcissist does not necessarily fall into a specific attachment style. Yeah, I'm trying to do the letting them come back to me just now. You're right, it does not feel so good. Yeah. And it's tough, right? Like it can really push those buttons, especially as they are ex, so may never come back. Yeah, I know your situation. I remember your story, and you went out of your way already to be sweet and to be kind. Agreed also on the purple monster, but still feeling bad for not being perfect, basically. Silly, I know. Yeah, so a lot of anxiously attached individuals do a lot of this. Since we're on this topic, this is really important. A lot of anxiously attached individuals will replay all the things they could have done differently and try to ruminate about, oh, if I could do this, then this might have happened, or if I just did this, then this could have taken place. And I see this happen a lot in the different patterns. And that's really tough, right? Like it can be really painful to be in that space. So notice that, like, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to get out of by thinking you should have been more perfect? And it's good that you recognize this because it helps take a layer of the pain off. But what are you trying to do by being more perfect? You're trying to become more worthy of love, right? Or you're trying to earn love in some way. And what that is it's sort of reinforcing. I'm going to say a bold statement here in a minute, but it's sort of reinforcing that love should be conditional. So I was having a conversation with somebody about this recently. It was a beautiful conversation. I'm going to try it. It was actually maybe the best conversation I've had about psychological stuff for a very long time. I'm going to try to record a version of this sort of insight and share it on the YouTube channel because it was really powerful. And there's a lot of backstory to it. So I'm not sure if it's going to make perfect sense in this context here, but the golden nugget from this conversation I was having was when we seek to earn somebody's love, when we seek to do something for somebody that, then they like us for it, or we seek to put ourselves together in a way that gets approval, or we seek to, do something, show ourselves to our partner in a certain way that they notice the side of us and see that we're smart or attractive or whatever it is in some form. As long as we're playing into those patterns, we're basically feeding conditional love. Because what we're doing is we're saying, you should love me for what I do, not for who I am. And when we're in our nature, when we're in our truth, when we're making decisions not based on I need you to like me, or I need you to love me or see me, when it's this is how I'm feeling and this is who I am and this is my authentic self, and I communicate myself this way because it feels in alignment, or this is my need right now and I'm in touch with it. And even if I think it might not be something that the other person needs or wants, I'm going to communicate it anyways because it's my truth. Or, you know what? This is my feeling right now. And whether or not this person accepts it, this is my truth. The more you come from that space, you're actually giving yourself the opportunity to be loved unconditionally, because you're not feeding yourself into creating conditions that get you love, which thus produces conditional love. And there's a lot of backstory to that. And it's actually connected to the narcissism in the household component, which is a lot of when you come from a narcissistic household, there's a lot of I need to earn love, I need to earn my worth. And this also shows up really strongly for anxiously attached individuals, for fearful avoidance. So when you're in that space, the more you keep trying to get seen or do things for somebody to get that love, you're basically putting those conditions on yourself. I'm only getting love when I do these things. And that's a very painful space to be operating from. So great shares in there though. And Nellie says, hi Nellie. As an AA, I wonder how to know if I'm clinically depressed and need to seek medical help in order to get better, or if this constant very low feeling will lift soon and it's just part of the process. I'm doing the coursework, by the way, but the feelings won't go away on a daily basis. I couldn't get out of bed today. Okay, so Nellie, I would go through there's so many questions I actually want to ask you. This is a very deep topic, but I would ask yourself, what triggered, has this been going on for a very long time? Is it when there's another thing that can happen, right? If this is when you started one of the courses and it brought up all these different feelings, like, oh my gosh, I noticed I have this wound and these triggers. This is something that will pass. But the tough part of this is that you have to do the worksheets. Like, it's so important. So if you want, what we'll do, like, this is our next webinar is literally about the worksheets and like pulling them through the process. So if there are things that are coming up for you, it sounds like it's been going on for a long time before, though, from the sound of it. Because, but if you want to do, you also might be, another thing is you might be getting in touch with some of those emotions that were there before, and maybe you were disregarding or you were in fight or flight mode and ignoring. So either way, I have a whole course that we've already recorded about depression. And the biggest reason, okay, so I'll go into this for a moment now. The biggest reason depressive episodes come up is that a whole bunch of feelings are surfacing from your subconscious mind at the same time, faster than you're processing them out. And what happens is that all these feelings come, they all come to the surface, you're not getting a chance to process them, and then it just feels heavy, and then your brain protects you by producing this sort of overlaying numbness over those feelings to try to repress them. If you work through this, and I promise you, like, I've worked with so many people in these contexts before. I was clinically diagnosed with depression over a decade ago, was on antidepressants, all this stuff. Honestly, I don't want to say, because I, like, if somebody's on antidepressants, like, don't go off your medication. I'm not saying any of that. If you ever do that, you have to do that in a supervised format. But I'm just, okay. I want to say so many things at the same time. So we have beliefs, right? We collect beliefs from childhood. These beliefs produce patterns of thought. These thoughts produce patterns of emotion. These emotions are made up of neurochemical reactions, okay? You're not born with depression. There's not a child that's born depressed. There are other hereditary things that we can have, but we know with depression that even if you have a genetic predisposition, the environmental factors are basically what activate the expression of that or not. And I would go so far as to say a lot of it in your environment is the subconscious imprinting you get that has a much bigger impact on any heredity that is taking place. So either way, we know environment is a major portion of depression. So let's say we're neutral or we're like fairly clean slates when we come into the world, and then we start getting all of these painful programs, things like, feeling not good enough because our parents are always, negatively reinforcing things or criticizing us or expecting a lot from us or pressuring us. Maybe you're bullied as a child and you think people don't like you. You take these beliefs, and these beliefs produce patterns of thought. So you have these core beliefs. You go into, a public place and you feel not good enough. You feel like people don't like you. All of your subconscious mind is going to activate these thoughts that are like, oh my gosh, those people are probably judging me. Oh my gosh, if I don't turn in this thing on time in my public workplace, people are going to know, they're going to judge me, they're going to like me even less. And that belief, those beliefs are going to be like a tree trunk that are going to create all these tree branches of thought that think all these scary things. How do you feel when you start thinking thoughts like that? Well, your feelings start to feel anxious, sad, disappointed, devastated. And these emotional responses are letting you know, hey, this stuff is being activated. It's really painful. Those emotions are creating neurochemical reactions, okay? So if you have a lot of painful beliefs, you're likely producing much less serotonin. And what are antidepressants? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. You're producing much less serotonin than you should be. And you're probably producing a lot more cortisol, norepinephrine, things that are wreaking havoc on your nervous system, that are exhausting you, that are keeping you in pain. And so what happens is this cycle runs. The emotions are being produced in patterns because the beliefs and thoughts are circulating in patterns. Then you have these negative neurochemical reactions, and then we start to create the chemical imbalance that's associated with depression. So if you're having a time where you're feeling really, really stressed and really like down, number one, check to make sure that you're not actually coming out of fight or flight mode, because it's very common that when you start doing this work and you get out of like the fight or flight mode, that you get really tired for 6 to 8 weeks. That's because you're going from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system mode. I see this a lot when I work with one-on-one clients. That's what I tend to see very quickly. It shows up, I would say, almost every time. I'm trying to think if there's an exception. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there might be. So notice that this is happening, and then the most important thing you can do, if it's not just fatigue, if it's actual like feeling sad and feeling down, is you have to work through those things. Those things are coming up for a reason. Those things are like very, very, very powerful. Like whatever those sad feelings are, what are they telling me? What are the thoughts and beliefs associated with them? And then pull it through the emotional processing worksheet. And the remedy I will give to you, Nellie, is if you do one emotional processing worksheet a day on an ongoing basis until that's lifted, you will see incredible changes in your subconscious mind. This is actually how I personally moved through my depression. So there, at the time, I was doing a version of the worksheet. It's slightly different. I was doing Byron Katie's work, if you guys know Byron Katie. And this was like tremendous for me. And what I've basically done is just taken some of that work, brought like the meaning level a little bit deeper, because sometimes Byron Katie's work is like, I'm mad at Sean because he left. And it's not Sean leaving that hurts as much. It's like, I'm giving you guys a really random example. It's not the leaving that hurts so much. It's what I make it mean about the leaving. Like he left and nobody cares about me. He left and I am unloved, right? So I pulled that in there instead, and then questioning those stories, and then your needs underneath. Because if we just do the stories without the needs, we didn't get all the way through. So please practice that. And if you are struggling, you can reach out to me, and I'll check in and stuff. Okay. Nikki, when you put up the new courses, will you take some down? Oh, sorry. I saw this earlier. My thing just scrolls up and down sometimes when it's too quickly. Okay, let's see. Hi, the one is Oslam, right? In the past, I've been so obsessive about understanding how DAs feel after a breakup. It was excessive and went on for way too long in the past. Is that a normal thing for AA? Yes, normal thing for AA. Absolutely. Where can I find and watch all the old webinars? So Hadil, when you go into the members lounge, you just click on the block that it looks like a course. It just says members lounge. And then you'll see a little drop-down menu. Click webinars and you'll see live webinars, webinar library. Go into webinar library and they're all there dated and with the topics on them. Marty says, Max, I think of it this way. A DA wants to be protected by the outer self that guards the door, who sometimes lets people in for a short while after a lot of persistent knocking. Yes, that's beautiful. The narcissist is the inner child who locks the door from the inside and becomes the jailer. I really like that analogy. That's really beautiful. Not comparing yourself to other people with different personalities is such a freeing concept. Amazing. Beautiful. Nikki says, but what if them not texting back as fast really is because they are not interested and the stories you were telling yourself are somewhat true? Amazing question. Back to the texting thing. So what if them not texting back is them not being interested? You'll see. You'll notice it, right? Like when you tell all the stories, think of it this way. It's like, okay, let me think of this, an analogy for a second. In every single moment, we are either moving towards the problem or to the solution. And there are no idle thoughts. The more we're having thoughts, the more those thoughts are creating programs, because it's the repetition of thought that creates an emotional response that programs the subconscious. So it's like this. Let's say there's Jane, and Jane is dating. And Jane is dating, and she's texting with somebody, and they're going back and forth and talking. And then this person, isn't talking as much. And she starts telling herself all these painful stories about why. Oh my gosh, it's because I'm not good enough. It's because they're losing interest. It's because this. It's because this. Well, what happens is all that starts to happen is she's programming her own unworthiness into her subconscious mind. How is that going to show up? Well, because that's a belief and thought pattern that will start to take place and be programmed. She's going to feel unworthy. And because we know neuroscience has proven that every single decision we make is based on emotions. When I feel unworthy, how do I start acting? I'm not that good with my boundaries. I give too much of myself away. I don't show up for myself in relationships. I don't express my needs. So that whole process is moving me way towards the problem, not towards the solution. And how do I act in the relationship? Maybe I act needy, or I go, hey, why haven't you texted me back? And then I call again, or, we may or may not do that. But we are more likely to do things like that out of a space of desperation when we're reinforcing these painful ideas into our own subconscious mind. Versus, and this is why this is such a great question, because so many people ask me forms of this, versus, let's say that it's like this instead. Let's say that let's say that I'm dating, or Jane's dating, and Jane goes, oh, like I can't tell if this person likes me because they're not talking as much to me. They're not texting me back enough. But you know what? I'm going to focus on myself. I'm going to focus on my own feelings, my own needs. I'm not going to tell any stories. Jane will find out, like, if this person, you guys are smart. Like, you guys will be able to notice if the person's not actually interested. There might be a period of time where it's in a gray zone, but the more that you're participating in your own life, the more the gray zone is tolerable, because it's like, oh, it's okay. I'm showing up for myself here. So if this thing doesn't work out, or it does work out, I'm not as hurt by it because I'm getting some of my own bucket filled through myself. And so when we're in that space where we're giving some of that to ourselves, not only do we deal better with the gray zone, but then if something does happen, we're more prepared to deal with the outcome, right? We're more in balance, and we're going to find out either way. But at least we didn't suffer the whole time in the process. Does that make sense? Such a great question. I get questions like this very often. And I'm really glad you asked that, Nikki, because it's like a powerful thing to make sure we remember. Okay, so my pull is to work. Yeah. Good, just making sure. Synchronicities, I just wrote door when you said door. That's awesome. Yeah, John, I'm glad I knew it was the right John. Hi, Lindsay. I saw your amazing comment earlier. It was so smart. Thais, what were the top 2 relationship killers in that article you mentioned? I can't remember, to be honest. I don't want to give you guys misinformation. I was telling somebody this the other day, and I couldn't remember the other 2. I just remember that one standing out to me. But I will... In the relationship mastery course, we put all the most important components of a relationship. Maybe I'll add a module in there that talks about what's most detrimental to a relationship. I think that's a great idea. Thank you for that. I'm going to do that. Because the relationship one comes out in a little bit later than the first 2, so as to not make people feel overwhelmed. So the pangs of sadness often accompany images and memories of hurtful experiences. The images are both real and imagined. Example, my DA being with her ex, whom she didn't tell me up front that she was still involved with, and started dating. This made me question my worth relative to him. What should I do about these images? Do I just try to interrupt them? Okay. These are great, great questions. Okay. So I want you to imagine this. I'm sitting here, and in my mind, I start playing out these images of painful events in my past. And so my brain goes into this like movie mode where I'm playing this whole movie, and I see this whole movie coming up, and I see it playing out. And in the movie, my ex is with somebody else, and I like the person more. And here's the crazy thing that you guys all need to know. This is so important. When I do this, when my anxious patterns do this, let's say, okay, I play this all out. I play the movie in my mind. My brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So I see this is when I've worked with a lot of people who throw up from anxiety, like have anxiety so badly that they're constantly throwing up. The exact pattern I see without exception to this pattern is that when people are throwing up from anxiety, it's because they are always replaying scary scenarios in their mind and reimagining scary scenarios in their mind to the point that they're like, let's say you have a trauma once, okay, where somebody hurts you or scares you or does something awful or whatever it might be. If somebody leaves you, a divorce, like it can be anything. And then you're constantly thinking about it, constantly reimagining it, re-engaging in it. What this is it's re-traumatizing yourself. So you lived that event once, and that was painful enough. Why do you keep making yourself live it over and over and over again? We don't need to add more pain. And so number 1, it's an amazing awareness that you have. And number 2, we all do this to a certain degree around something. And we need to stop because it's just hurting us more and more. And our brain truly, truly has great difficulty telling the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So you're taking one trauma and you're re-traumatizing yourself. For people who I saw who are throwing up from anxiety, I'd ask them and they'd be like, I probably thought about it 40, 50 times this week. And it's like, so you relived that trauma, 51 times total, right? So as an example. So number one, notice when you're doing it, okay? It'll get easier as you go. These are your steps. Number one, it's called a pattern interruption in neurolinguistic programming. You say cancel, cancel. You just break the pattern. It's something abrupt to kind of like wake you up out of that. You say cancel, cancel to yourself, and then you replace with a different thought. And this thought has to be something like it's a cognitive reframe. So you said, my DA being with her ex, you might look at, how did this serve me? What was good about this happening? I know this is a painful thought to even think about, but ask yourself, like, what came out of this? Did I start to work on myself? Did I start to connect to myself? Have I learned about myself because of this? Is it maybe a good thing that I'm not with somebody who is being dishonest and who is seeing multiple people, and does that line up with my values? It may or may not, and either one is perfectly okay. But you want to say cancel, cancel, and you want to start replacing your thoughts consciously. Your conscious mind can control your thinking. When those thoughts are running on autopilot, it's because you're identified with them. You're in them. You've become them. You've merged with them. When you become conscious again and wake up out of it, you can create different shifts in your thought patterning by intentionally going, I'm going to think about something different, something that empowers me, something that boosts me up, builds me up in some form, or something that's kind to myself. And when you do that, at first your brain's going to keep wanting to go back, but you just keep interrupting the pattern, keep intentionally thinking new thoughts. And through repetition over a couple of days, you'll see it gets way easier until you've built the muscle of being able to control your own thinking. There's a big difference between thinking on autopilot and intentionally thinking. And this is a really important concept for everybody. When I don't intentionally think, I am thinking through all the patterns that I got from mom, dad, society, any unresolved wounds that I had. So really, when I'm thinking on autopilot, my mom, my dad, the painful people who hurt me in my life are actually in control of my brain at those times. And when I notice that I'm doing this, and I can repattern these things through creating conscious, intentional thought that line up with what I want to feel, what I want to create in my life. When I can do this, I become in charge of my destiny. I become in charge of my mind, and I'm no longer giving my power away to the people who hurt me in the past. And so I hope that is really clear, but it's very, very, very important. And that was a fantastic question. And if the suffering is becoming the comfort zone, Nellie, I just saw your comment here below. Being broken up with is what triggered it. Oh, my dear. Okay. Okay. So the being broken up with is going to be a process. It's okay to be in bed for a day. Oh my goodness. You're a human. You guys, you're not supposed to, it's okay to grieve. What I hear is when you're being in bed for a day, it means you're not being with your emotions enough. And so your body's trying to stop you. So pause, get in touch with your emotions, be with your emotions for a little bit, and then do the work around that. The work around that, I have a video on it for each attachment style. And I have a general video on it. If you really work through those principles and sit down and do the work, it'll help so much. But in the meantime, exactly what I just said to W.L. Hung, exactly what I just said about like being in control of your thoughts, interrupting the patterns, cancel, thought upgrading, like consciously thinking will be really helpful. And also, it's really helpful as well to look at, as hard as this is to look at, how could this relationship ending potentially serve me in some way? What might I learn from this? How might I grow? Is it possible that this really wasn't a match? Is it possible that this person wasn't serving me? And go through those steps. It's very, very important. Okay, so I have to run in a second because I'm supposed to have a hard 4:30 stop today. So I'm going to copy and paste these questions. But I'm going to answer Lindsay's question really quick here because I started reading it. My DA is 29. I'm 28. I was asking to move in together after 3 years together. I pressured him. I recognize now I falsely believed his refusal to move in was him not loving me and hit on his wounds. He left 4 months ago and recently began seeing someone new. I'm starting to recognize this is an opportunity to be with someone more secure, which may be better for my AA self. Wow. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Good for you. And like, honestly, even if we love a person, even if we care about them deeply, if they're not able to show up healthily on the other side and not participate in the relationship, and if somebody pushes you away and leaves because they feel pressured to move in, like what should happen, but what ideally in a healthy dynamic happens is they say, hey, I do love you. I do care about you. That might be a story that you're telling yourself. I'm feeling pressured right now to move in and it's making me need to pull away. And I would like to work through this together. But if instead the person leaves, maybe it really truly wasn't the right person, right? Is that what you want for the rest of your life? Is that what you want in those challenging moments and challenging situations where you have kids and there's a challenge or an accident that takes place, or there's, some kind of a situation where there is pressure, because that will inevitably happen. And if he wasn't able to work through that with you, I don't think that's a bad thing. And God bless him. Like, hopefully he gets his own opportunity to heal, but I think it's beautiful you're able to see that perspective. Okay, so I wish I could stay here and answer all these questions so much. Depression, you have totally changed my mind on the cause. I'm so glad to hear that, because I used to believe that with all my heart too. And when I really recognized the difference, it was like it gave me the power back. So this isn't like, hey, everybody go off antidepressants if you're on them. Like, do the work first, reprogram yourself first. You'll start feeling way better, then start weaning, and then keep doing and wean with your psychologist or whoever's supervising, a supervising physician, because it's really important the way you come off of antidepressants. Like, it can be a shock to your system. But if, that is a change, like, so changeable. It's so disappointing to me. I disappoint myself with my thinking about depression, but it's so, when I really realized this and really like moved through this and then helped so many other people through this and just saw how clear it is that, like, wow, that's not what the Western healthcare system is making it out to be. It was like so disappointing to me that so many people are struggling and not getting the right tools and the right help to move through their depression and anxiety. Like, it's such a solvable problem. And the fact that that's not out there to everybody is heartbreaking. But I'm breaking my own heart by thinking about that in that context. And in reality, everything has its time and its place. And we are moving towards that as a society collectively. Do you guys see me correcting my own thoughts as I'm speaking out loud? So I do this a lot with clients. This is good work for you guys. If you're like, this person's hurting me, or, that thing, sometimes the person or thing might actually be hurting you, and that's good. And you want to acknowledge that. But a lot of times we are hurting ourselves with our thoughts about the thing. Right. So I'm so mad that the weather is not the way I want it to, it shouldn't be raining outside. No, I'm hurting myself with my thoughts about what should be happening, right? It's not the weather hurting me. It's my thoughts about the weather, that kind of stuff. It's just good to get into that habit. Okay. So I wish I could stick here with you guys for like another couple hours and just talk about these beautiful things. And I'm going to have to answer some more of the questions in the Facebook group that I wanted to. I was just checking some other questions. So I didn't get to answer all the questions that I wanted to, but I will put some time in for them at the beginning of next week, because you guys all asked amazing questions here. And the next webinar, we're going to go through the worksheet. So the thought processing, the emotional processing worksheet that I talk about all the time, we're just going to do live examples so that it gives everybody coming in lots of examples when they want to work through it. So come in if you have like an emotional processing thing from the emotional mastery and belief reprogramming course that you want to work through, like a problematic event, something that you're feeling challenged through. Nelly, I would love if you want to do a live example there. I can help you sort of start getting out of that space. And that would be a really good way of shifting out of that sort of depressed mode from the breakup just happening. And what we'll do is we'll just work through that so much. One other quick question I have to answer. So just one other question, because I just saw 3 of you ask this in a row in different forms. Yes, I'm feeling extreme fatigue with this work. Do you have strategies for getting energy but sticking with the work? I'm exercising, but mental fatigue is slowing me down. So, number one, what this actually is your body shifting out of sympathetic into parasympathetic. It's such a good sign. Like it means like sympathetic is low level fight or flight. Your body's not getting a proper chance to rest and digest and repair. So what you want to do, it's because all the subconscious stuff is sort of coming, you're starting to work through it. Your body's like, oh, I can like start relaxing. There's a way out of this. I don't have to remain in fight or flight mode. So the things that I would do, honestly, make sure like the only way to shorten the period of this is to be gentle to yourself. Don't push yourself during this time. Like I would almost rest yourself a little bit more, almost even like scaling back on exercise for a couple weeks. You'll feel very quickly that you come out of this, but I would rest, and I would also take time to, this is going to sound strange, but it's so important, rest as effectively as possible. So just be with yourself. Okay. So for example, let's say that, okay, this is a big topic and I'm going to have to run, but, there's a difference between trying to rest and actually resting. When we're resting and we're thinking about all the things we should be doing, and we're not actually just being and just allowing ourselves to just like literally be in silence, be quiet, read, just be with ourselves, we're not actually resting. And when we're feeling extra tired, the best thing to do is to rest as effectively as possible. So I mean, like, go lay in bed when you get home from work. If this happened to any of you guys, you get home from work, whatever it is, lay in bed in silence for like 15, 20 minutes until you like actually feel like you want to get out of bed. And you'll feel, and the reason for this is not to like be in bed and be sad or anything like that. It's like your body, like when you're just in your being energy, that like sort of passive energy, you get a chance to just kind of like come back into parasympathetic, rest your thinking, relax for a second. And then what you'll find is naturally you're like, okay, I want to get out of bed and do things again. And that energy tends to come back. I've told so many people about this over the years. It sounds like the strangest concept. Practice it. You'll see crazy things happen. It's almost as if like that proper resting where you don't have a commitment to something, you're not doing something, your attention's not being taken somewhere like television or social media. When you actually just sit and be with yourself, nothing re-energizes you as quickly as that does. I actually have seen so many results of this in my own life that this is my daily practice. So when I finish work, I put on like cozy socks or like wrap myself in blankets for like 15 minutes and I just be with myself. And I re-energize myself that way for the rest of my evening. And I know that sounds so strange and kind of vulnerable, but please try it. It's so effective. Okay, so I just want to, so Brian, 2.5 months out from a breakup, ran into her yesterday, talked for 30 minutes, don't know if she is FA or DA. The short is I am responsible for her leaving by how I reacted to her behavior. It was not about the lying and manipulation on her part for over 14 months. She'd get emotional and tell me she loves me. Then she proceeded to shut down hard again. Can't make any sense of it. Definitely fearful avoidant. Definitely on the dismissive side of fearful avoidant because you're probably on the more anxious side. And then that's coming in and making her become more dismissive. And to me, when I hear that she's lying and manipulating, to me, I hear that it probably wasn't the healthy relationship for you, right? Like this person was hurting you and then not taking accountability and then blaming you and then being hot and cold. And it doesn't sound like it's a healthy dynamic. So I would just look at what some of my boundaries could be. Yeah, and check in there. And I just want to say hi to Mark and Scott, who I haven't seen in here yet, at least making the comments. Just got to get the difference right between England and Canada. Amazing. And Scott, you've been shutting down too. Yeah. Oh, don't tell yourself you're stupid. You are like, look for how this is A, normal. There's nothing stupid. And B, that this is because you're digging into some of the, you guys, when you're doing this work, you are digging into like the depths of your wounds, bringing them to the surface, cleaning them off and bringing yourselves out of them. Like this and integrating them, right? This is like for the deepest healing possible. We have to go right into the subconscious and it's not easy work. It's normal to have little bits of resistance. I went through this when I was really digging into this work as a human being. You have, sometimes you just have to tune in and be like, you know what? I need to take the day off today. I'm going to return tomorrow. And then if you're noticing you're resisting a little too much and you're like, wait, I feel like I'm falling off track, just start again. Like we were talking with Marty earlier, like little tiny incremental steps. You know what? I'm just going to sit down for 15, 20 minutes and you'll start to feel the well-being feelings coming through more and more the more you're doing this work until that's your natural new state. So thank you for these amazing questions. Last thing, because I keep saying I have to run and I keep not going. I'm just pulled here. I am going to be doing the next 2 weeks. I'm going to maybe tweak one of the days a little bit. Like maybe I'll do a different day of the week just to incorporate some people, because a lot of people have reached out and said they can't make the lives and really want to be here. And a couple people, Mark, I think 3 people in the Facebook chat today said, like, I'm in a different time zone. The 3 o'clock is often too late for me. Can you do them earlier? So I'm going to maybe move one to a Sunday and do it earlier. I have commitments early Saturday morning that I can't change, but Sunday, maybe I'll make one on a Sunday and do it earlier, so it's easier for people in a different time zone to be here. So I will get that organized for you guys as well. And yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. The last few comments I think are mostly, oh no, there's a lot more comments. I'm going to just copy and paste some of them. I'm seeing all these like really beautiful things. Hi, Michelle. Thank you guys so much. Hi, Chelsea. Yes. Thank you. Okay, you guys are amazing. I literally, thank you so much, Christy. I literally can't thank you enough. This is my favorite work to do. Like, I'm so honored and inspired and excited every day. I get to just talk about this stuff with other people in a similar journey. When I started this journey for myself, it was kind of lonely for a while because I didn't really know a lot of people who were digging into the subconscious and doing this. And this is a great blessing for me to just be around people who are on this. And I learn from you guys and the amazing comments and questions you ask. I'm learning all the time still, and learning about what to learn about next to better serve you guys. And so thank you for being a part of my growth and my journey and everything as well. And thank you for being so supportive and loving to one another. It's beautiful and so wonderful to see. Have an amazing rest of your weekend, guys. Thank you. Bye.